think when I said 10 words, because you know the next meeting is going to start.
And there's been some pressures that they've contributed to the
My name's Harry Rhodes. I am involved quite heavily with patents. I've written patents for people on an international scale sometimes and got them granted. I'm going to concentrate to do with some NextRad. We went to the Met Office only a few weeks ago. The Met Office has a supercomputer. It's one of the biggest in the world, and they're upgrading it. And it controls every weather manipulation. We'll say that because there's patents here on this. The NextRad actually is possible to control the weather with it. It certainly monitors the weather. Every one of them is linked to that computer from the whole of Europe, including the UK and Germany. But because I write patents, I like facts. I don't like wishy-washy, well, I think it's this. So I want to present a few facts visually that can't be explained under natural circumstances. Now in the Met Office, they have a list. They explain how a NextRad works. A NextRad sends out radio waves that can affect the atmosphere, and it can cause precipitation. Not only does it send waves out, it can receive waves. That's what a dish can do. Now, there's a map of where all the radio waves, all the antennas are across the UK, and in fact, myself and Max Bliss have a list of every one of these across the whole of the world. There are thousands of them, not just a few, and they put positively charged and negatively charged ions into the atmosphere. And when this happens, this is what you'll see. What you're seeing here is a NextRad in Valencia. I'm going to show you on Google Earth where it is. Now as this goes, these are beams. Now NextRads only work on 15 kilowatts. When the beams come out, it goes up to 750,000 watts, and you'll see precipitation occur. When they have the frequency correct, and they work with other NextRads or other towers that you see with one single pole on, they charge the atmosphere, and you will see precipitation come around that area. This is that NextRad we were talking about just. We'll zoom in on Google Earth, and you'll see one of those towers in exactly that position. But what we'll be showing you after is how it actually manufactures clouds. So this is just a matter of going through the motions really. And it's there at that position. Now, in a few moments it will go on to play a section from the satellite where clouds are actually manufactured in exactly that spot, and where another single, it's one of those towers with a single pin on top that actually puts positive ions into the atmosphere. So that's where that one is. There are also patents along the lines of this. This one's been granted quite recently, and it's to do with the positive ions in the atmosphere. They cause a vortex of plasma right through the atmosphere to the outer atmosphere to draw energy down. We're talking of hundreds of millions of volts. And these have actually been granted. So we're looking at changes in the atmosphere. Certainly this is going to affect the atmosphere and the climate to a massive degree. So I just want to try and bring this forward to where it is most time-wise. Go and check up on it now. And this is the sort of wavelength that Max was talking about. These are always surrounding NextRads, the wavelengths that come round. But if you want to actually see, let me try find where this cloud is. Well, that's just stating there, they only use 15 kilowatts of energy, but on the pulses, they actually use 750,000 watts. And that's enough to alter the atmosphere and cause precipitation. But by altering the ions and taking them out of this atmosphere, that releases all the moisture in an absolute instant. And that's exactly what we're seeing down Devon when the floods happened and people lost their houses and the land. And we say political is involved, politics in it. It's very unusual that the people that bought the land after the flooding came, that were linked, now start fracking down there.
Can I just add to that really quickly? There's a paper produced by Reading University, or one of the universities that deal with weather modification and weather programs. They dealt with the SPICE project as well, which is well known. They produced a paper called Making Space for Water about 10 years ago, and it was about the planned flooding of certain areas of southwest England. So that kind of fits in quite well with what you're saying.
There's an X-rad in this area. All these are X-rads, but when they alter the wavelength, they can actually rotate the atmosphere either clockwise or anti-clockwise. There's hundreds of instances of this occurring, and this is why I believe the weather is going to be drastically changing, not because of natural climate change, but because it's been manipulated. Why is there only £5 million in this country spent on geoengineering and nearly £200 million spent on patents to manipulate the weather? That doesn't stack up.
£200 million. You said £200.
200 million. Yeah, £200 million. America hasn't spent £5 million. That's what they're saying now. I wish we'd have £5 million spent on it. But there's hundreds of patents on weather manipulation, but they're not doing it. And these are the wavelengths that come out of the X-rads. That's what you see in the atmosphere and the cloud. Now, they aren't just local. These wavelengths, according to this brochure from the Met Office, can travel up to 300 miles. So you don't need many of these to actually seriously affect the weather. But the section I was after for the weather manipulation, which you've got to see, I'm going to show you this one and then I'm finished. Bear with me. Now this is Valencia, and this is exactly the position where they are. You see it kicking there, you see it spread round, and it comes down here. Another one starts there. See how it bursts out from nowhere, middle of nowhere. How do clouds form like that? With a ring that forms. You'll see it start activating there. There. There's a ring there, and then it bursts out, and the second one's there. And then that's how they make clouds. You can go on most weather stations, satellites, and you can see it actually taking place. Gentleman at the back.
Yeah, I'm just interested to know what physical process you suggest is involved here. I mean, you're talking about frequencies and ionisation, but none of the stuff that you're saying, as far as I'm aware, has any connection to cloud physics and how clouds actually form.
Well,
so I'd be interested to know the mechanism that you're actually suggesting, because if you're proposing that this is occurring, it should be possible to test the mechanism that you're suggesting is being used on a small scale to demonstrate the principle can be used in the way that you claim it's being used, okay?
Yeah.
So,
That's easy.
I don't have any clue what
there are
you're suggesting.
Probably about 50 patents on that subject alone, causing precipitation with electromagnetic waves.
There's two companies I know of, one called AQS in Australia. They're working in the Horn of Africa, Mexico, in Saudi Arabia and in Australia. So they're using electromagnetic beams.
With respect, you're not answering the question. The question I've asked is very specific. What mechanism are you suggesting occurs to cause changes in the weather? You're suggesting that an electromagnetic radiation event occurs, and as a result, a change in the weather occurs. What is the link between those things?
It's the very, very small
embryonic ions.
It's the small nanoparticles, the way they treat it with electromagnetism. When those are removed from the atmosphere in such a way with electromagnetics.
How?
Well,
there's an experiment with CERN. CERN's done an experiment making a cloud with using cosmic rays, which is very much the same principle. They say CERN in, you know what CERN is?
I know what CERN is, and I know what cosmic ray is, and cosmic ray is not electromagnetic radiation, it's particles coming down from space. Okay?
Well, when I've watched a lecture from CERN, the man talked about electromagnetic frequencies from the sun as well as muons from nuclear radiation acting the same way as the cosmic rays. He definitely made I can show you that and you can evaluate it for yourself.
Can I just answer that really quickly?
But that's a job that should be done by scientists, I think.
Yeah, we're not sat here trying to
way to find scientists.
Can I refer you to my comment earlier, which is, you know, we're not sat here trying to say, you know, we understand this fully and God, don't you get it? What we're trying to do is present the visual and circumstantial evidence that we've discovered and open it up and say, well, actually, this is what we think is going on, and could you help us? Could you explain it? Can you explain
Well,
it?
there's no evidence that any of the stuff that you're suggesting is happening. So.
Well, okay.
Well,
If
some
that's
evidence.
your opinion after having watched this talk, then I would suggest, with respect, that you're probably an unreachable person, as we term it. You know, I think
There's
quite a lot of what
imagery
we've presented today is quite remarkable. You know, in terms of, you know, we've seen the equipment, we've seen evidence of what it's doing.
You show pictures of stuff. It doesn't mean that is anything connected with what
Right.
you're suggesting.
I've actually read the patents. Why you can't get a patent for less than £65,000 granted.
What's that got to do with anything?
Well, why would you pay £65,000 on something that doesn't work?
Well, people patent rubbish all the time.
So as I read these patents, there's all different types of patents to do with the wavelengths and precipitation.
Well, if it's patents, it's in the public domain, right? So
Yes, it
you
is.
can see the methodology.
Not all of them. The military patents are not for perusal.
Okay, well, you can see the methodology that's being proposed, so you can see what mechanism is suggested by the patent as a way of achieving the desired effect, right? So I'm talking about something that I do professionally anyway. You know, I've been involved in the patent process in the last few months, right? So if you read the patent and it says a method of inducing rainfall by means of radio frequency electromagnetic radiation, and then you read it and it suggests a mechanism and it describes the equipment to induce the effect that it describes, then you can go firstly and see if it's the atmospheric and environmental emissions that you're expecting from the patent are actually occurring, because you can measure these things quite easily, right? And then you can test the effect that's in the patent to see if it actually works. The patent process isn't there to determine whether things work or not.
Absolutely. First flying saucer patent, it didn't work, but it got a grant.
But yeah, I
Well,
think
no,
what you're describing
we didn't
is
look at
probably
this.
no more realistic than flying saucers with respect.
Yeah.
Or
No, I'm just saying, you said it doesn't have to work. It doesn't have to work.
Well, but
But
you're saying
there are US government programs and lots of records where they have learned to control the ionosphere. They've admitted themselves.
Yeah,
I've got a
I'm not
video of it.
suggesting that these things that
Guys, can I just wrap that up? I think we've understood, and you know, we're trying to be as honest as we can and open as we can, and hold our hands up and say, well, we don't know everything. So
my
you know,
suggestion is you've got a very limited understanding of the physical processes involved. Like,
of course we do, because we're not atmospheric scientists.
Well, okay, you don't have to be an atmospheric scientist to understand the difference between
Okay, you see the patents.
and an electric. Please, let me just
It's a
set
charge,
aside the
charge,
patents.
isn't it?
The patents are not helping the debate. Okay?
No, but you see the patents, you see the towers,
Patents.
you see the radio wavelengths, you see the precipitation.
But the patents are not helping this debate. Okay.
Okay, look, we're going around in circles, so if we can talk a bit more about it. We've got another question, actually. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for presenting. I know this was an impromptu session, so appreciate you throwing together some things to present. I think one thing that might be really helpful is, you know, categorizing this in a slide deck or something like that, sort of presenting it coherently and saying what you do and don't know, or what you've guessed, or what your data is, you know, regarding this.
Absolutely.
So I think there's something here, and I think, you know, I think there are a lot of people around this conference who would be willing to dissect it, or would be willing to help answer some of these questions. I think you have content interspersed throughout here that's valid. Maybe it's some research questions, but you know, the people around here are fact-driven people. They're just sort of, I think they'd be willing to help you out, but I think that would be maybe the next step is saying, wow, will you collaborate with me on this thing, or will you help me? Because everybody around here is really approachable, and I think that's the next step forward from where I'm sitting.
I think you're absolutely right, and personally, that is my position. As I said earlier, the talks I do are normally 4 to 5 hours. I didn't have the talk with me, so I've literally had to cobble something really quick from random images I had from my Facebook and from my laptop that I happen to have with me. So you're not getting the full picture, and you know, I specialise in the distribution network and pipes and planes, as I said. You know, Harry's slightly different, Max is slightly different. So you're absolutely right. I mean, if we spent a couple of weeks, you know, putting all this information together in a coherent format, then I think you're right. It would be quite a convincing presentation. And just to reiterate what you said is, we invite comment, we invite questions, and we would love nothing more than to sit down in a room with a bunch of eminent scientists and say, okay, well, this is what we think. Let's bash it out. you know, and we might be right on 6 out of 10 things. I don't know. Who knows?
I think everybody here spent their life doing that, so you're in the right place.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
I was talking to the lawyers on 11:30 where they do the governance or legality of geoengineering. And one of the scientists in the room, when it was questioned, the particular lawyer didn't want to give a talk on something because she didn't agree with the principles of solar radiation management. And he asked why you're not giving the talks, and he says because I don't agree with it. And the alarm bells are ringing. He says, well, and we're talking about the public. We want the public to know about geoengineering. And he says, well, we don't want the public to know because we might lose our funding. That was word for word what was said.
Sorry, where was this? They're heading to the
It was in the room upstairs, one of the lecture rooms, and it was the end of the meeting on speaking about the legality of geoengineering.
He said he loses funding?
Yeah, they don't want the public to know the full details of geoengineering because the funding, if the public say no, they'll lose the funding.
Well, we're
It's-
working to advocate the interests and the knowledge base of the public. So,
Yeah.
we're academics.
So
We're
my
not-
point was, would the top scientists help us to talk about things like this?
Their
What
job
we
is
say
to answer questions and shoot things down or corroborate
Yeah.
things. So yes, I think they would.
I think that's nice to, we'll see if we can nail that by the end of the week.
Okay, we're going to pass it to Terry now.
Okay,
Yes.
I just want to add to the last topic there about the